The Whitmore Grand Hotel glittered like a crown jewel against the night skyline. Crystal chandeliers shimmered through the tall glass windows, casting golden light onto the marble steps outside. Inside, the annual charity gala was in full swing. Politicians, investors, celebrities, and socialites drifted from table to table, their laughter mixing with the soft notes of a live string quartet. Daniel Whitmore stood near the center of it all, composed and commanding in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. At 45, he had the calm presence of a man who had conquered every room he had ever entered. His voice carried quiet authority as he discussed international investments with a group of executives. Every gesture was controlled, every word calculated. Beside him earlier that evening had been his daughter, Amelia, bright-eyed and curious at 12 years old. But speeches and financial talk bored her quickly. After posing for photographs with her father, she had drifted away toward the dessert tables, enchanted by fountains of flowing chocolate and towers of delicate pastries. The terrace doors stood open, allowing the spring breeze to sweep into the ballroom. Beyond them, the city lights flickered like distant stars. Amelia wandered toward the view, drawn by the reflection of the skyline on the river below. Outside, the terrace was quieter. A few staff members moved discreetly along the edges, ensuring glasses were refilled and trays collected. At the far end, near a narrow service stairway that led to a lower maintenance level, stood a boy in a worn gray hoodie and faded jeans. His sneakers were scuffed at the toes. He kept to the shadows, careful not to step into the glow of the chandeliers. His name was Marcus. His mother, Lillian, worked in the hotel kitchen. She had taken an extra shift tonight because the gala meant generous overtime pay. During her short break, she allowed Marcus to step outside for fresh air while she returned to prepare the next round of appetizers. Marcus leaned against the wall, watching the skyline. He was used to places like this, but only from the edges. He had learned early that some spaces welcomed you warmly, while others tolerated you only if you stayed invisible. He noticed the girl in the blue dress wandering closer to the terrace edge. She seemed carefree, humming to herself, unaware of the thin film of water near the service steps where condensation had gathered on the stone. He saw it just before it happened. Amelia's satin shoe slid, her body tilted forward, arms flailing as she tried to regain balance. The decorative railing did not extend fully along that narrow service gap. Beyond it were steep concrete stairs descending sharply to the lower level. A sharp scream pierced the air. Marcus didn't think. He ran. In 2 strides he reached her, grabbing her wrist just as her upper body tipped over the edge. Her small frame hung halfway above the stairwell. The heel of one shoe clattered down the steps. Marcus planted his feet and gripped the metal railing with his other hand. The sudden weight pulled his shoulders forward painfully. "I've got you," he gasped. Amelia's eyes were wide with terror. She clutched his arm desperately, her fingers digging into his sleeve. Inside the ballroom, guests turned toward the sound. Glasses paused mid-air. Conversations died mid-sentence. Daniel Whitmore heard the scream. Something primal tore through him. He spun toward the terrace and saw the unthinkable, his daughter dangling over the edge, held only by a stranger. The glass in his hand slipped and shattered across the marble floor. "Amelia!" he shouted, his voice cracking for the first time that night. He ran. Guests parted in confusion as he rushed through them, ignoring security's attempts to follow in orderly fashion. His polished shoes slipped slightly on the terrace stone, but he didn't slow. Marcus's arms trembled violently now. The metal railing cut into his palm. His scraped skin burned, but he tightened his grip. Amelia was heavier than he expected. Panic surged through him, but he refused to let go. Daniel reached them just as Marcus, with a strained cry, managed to pull Amelia upward enough for Daniel to seize her shoulders. Together they lifted her safely onto the terrace. Daniel dropped to his knees, pulling Amelia into his chest as if anchoring her to the earth. She sobbed into his jacket. "Daddy, I'm here," he whispered, voice shaking. "I'm here." For a long moment, he could hear nothing but his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Then he looked up. Marcus stood a few steps away, breathing hard. His hoodie sleeves were smeared with dust and a thin streak of blood ran across his palm. He looked uncertain, almost afraid, of what would happen next. Security guards rushed forward instinctively. "Sir, is everything?" Daniel raised a hand sharply. "Stop." His eyes remained fixed on the boy. You caught her? Daniel asked quietly. Marcus nodded once. I just saw her slip. The simplicity of the words stunned him. No pride, no demand, just truth. Daniel stood slowly, helping Amelia to her feet while keeping an arm protectively around her. He approached Marcus. Up close, he saw how young the boy really was. 14, maybe. There was exhaustion in his eyes that didn't belong to someone his age. Daniel removed a crisp white handkerchief from his pocket and gently pressed it into Marcus's bleeding hand. You're hurt. It's nothing, sir, Marcus murmured, trying to pull back. Daniel didn't let him. It's not nothing. The crowd had gathered now, whispering. Moments earlier, Marcus had been invisible. Now every eye followed him. Daniel turned to the guests, his voice steady but thick with emotion. This young man saved my daughter's life. Silence blanketed the terrace. Then applause began, tentative at first, then growing stronger. Some guests wiped at their eyes. Others looked away, ashamed that they had stood frozen while a boy had acted without hesitation. Amelia stepped forward and, without thinking twice, wrapped her arms around Marcus. Thank you, she whispered. Marcus froze for a moment, then carefully returned the hug. Later, when the crowd dispersed and the music resumed, Daniel asked security to find Marcus's mother. Lillian arrived pale and breathless, still wearing her kitchen apron. Fear filled her eyes as she looked between her son and the billionaire. I'm so sorry if he caused trouble, she began quickly. Daniel shook his head firmly. Your son prevented a tragedy. Lillian stared at Marcus, then back at Daniel, trying to understand. Daniel invited them into a private lounge away from the noise. The room was quiet, filled with leather chairs and soft lighting. It felt smaller somehow, more human. What's your name? Daniel asked. Marcus Reed, sir. And you were here with your mother? Yes, sir. Daniel studied him. What were you doing near the terrace? Just getting air. I didn't mean to be in the way. Daniel felt a sharp pang at those words. You weren't in the way, he said softly. You were exactly where you needed to be. Amelia sat beside her father, still holding his hand but looking at Marcus with admiration. Do you like school? She asked suddenly. Marcus shrugged slightly. Yeah, mostly math and science. Daniel leaned forward. What do you want to become? Marcus hesitated, glancing at his mother before answering. An engineer. I like building things, fixing things. Daniel exchanged a look with Amelia. Something inside him shifted, something deeper than gratitude. He had built an empire from ambition. But this boy had built courage in a second that counted. Over the following days, Daniel could not shake the image of Amelia's small hand slipping, and Marcus's hand catching it. Within a week, he invited Marcus and Lillian back to his office. This time, there were no gala lights. Just daylight pouring through tall windows overlooking the city. Daniel slid a folder across the desk. I've established a full academic scholarship in your name, he said. It will cover your education through college. Tuition, books, mentorship. Everything. Marcus stared at him, speechless. You don't have to do that, Lillian said quietly, overwhelmed. Yes, Daniel replied gently. I do. He looked at Marcus. The world needs engineers who act when others hesitate. Tears filled Lillian's eyes. Amelia, who had insisted on attending the meeting, beamed. Now we can build things together. Marcus finally found his voice. Why are you doing this? Daniel paused. Because that night, I saw something priceless. Not money, not status, character. And character deserves opportunity. Months passed. Marcus visited often, sometimes studying with Amelia in the hotel's quiet conference rooms. They built model bridges, argued over design flaws, laughed like children unburdened by labels. The invisible line that once separated their worlds slowly faded. One afternoon, Daniel stood alone on the terrace where everything had changed. The same railing, the same city lights. He rested his hand against the cool metal and exhaled deeply. He had nearly lost the most precious thing in his life. Instead, he had gained something unexpected, a reminder that greatness isn't measured in billions, but in bravery shown when no one is watching. And when he had run across that terrace in terror, believing he was racing to save his daughter, he hadn't realized something else. He was running toward the boy who would quietly change his heart forever.